What up, y'all? This is the Twice Over Movies podcast, and I'm your host, Faraz. Today is our discussion episode on Almost Famous. Be aware that this episode contains spoilers. If you have not seen this movie, check out our preview episode in your podcast feed. On Monday, we will have our discussion up for Tenet, so be on the lookout for that. Also, we have our previews out for Nocturnal Animals and $1 Million Baby. Make sure to check them out. Remember to subscribe to the Twice Over Movies podcast, and if you have any suggestions or feedback, hit us up at the Twice Over on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and while you're there, follow us so you don't miss any of our releases. Alright, so here's the Almost Famous discussion with myself, Farhan, and Fahad. Okay, we're back on the other side discussing Almost Famous.
Where do we start? We could talk about, let's talk about the writing. Let's just start off with the writing.
Sure.
Really well written dialogue. The dialogue in this movie, like other Cameron Crowe movies, he puts in little pieces of poetry and he puts in a lot of natural language around it, so it's not in your face and it's not preachy. You know, the dialogue, there's always pauses and there's filler words, and the performances are such that it's not in your face. None of the poetry is.
Right.
And there is a lot of poetry. This is a very quotable movie, like Frost said before.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a bunch of them.
So the movie is all about relationships, right? There's not much plot going on in terms of like anything for the actors to explain. So I think because there's no exposition to be delivered through actors' dialogue, it definitely helps the movie. It helps all the performances, all the dialogue. Like you said, it's very naturalistic.
See, that's where I disagree. I don't think the dialogue's very natural at all.
Really?
Like, if you're gonna be throwing poetry in there and it's not so natural then anymore, is it? Not that it makes it bad.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it more interesting to watch, I guess. But.
Well, so here, let me give you an example. And again, some of this is going to go into acting, and a lot of this is just straight from Philip Seymour Hoffman's mouth. Which, I mean, he's the one dude who did not have a single bad performance, but again, he was barely in any scenes. But he narrates quite a bit, or he's on the phone quite a bit. But the dialogue, the lines that he's given, it's not poetry in the sense that it's not like, Edgar Allan Poe or whatever. It's poetry in the sense that it is so human and it's so appealing and it works so well for the movie in a poetic way. I'll give you an example. So one example is
like the little bits of foreshadowing he did. Don't become friends with the band and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That stuff. But I was thinking more. So in the beginning, one of the first things he says, he's talking to William Miller. That's Billy Crudup in the film. And he says, what are you, the star of your school? And he's like, they hate me. He's like, yeah, you'll meet them all again on their journey to the middle. On their long journey to the middle. That's such a great line.
Yeah.
Or he's like, do you do drugs? And he's like, no. He's like, smart kid. I used to do speed. And sometimes a little cough syrup.
I think
like that's poetry.
I think Philip Seymour Hoffman was playing himself in this movie.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's that was just executed so well. Yeah. And there's, the dialogue is comedic. It's not overly so. He puts in comedy in here just enough to give you he put you into a positive vibe so that he can make you cry later, or he could try to make you cry later, or at least make your significant other cry later.
Pull at the heartstrings.
And he does that a lot throughout the movie. I don't think the dialogue is really the reason why. I think a lot of that is some of the music and the directing that we talked about before. But yeah, the dialogue is just golden at a lot of points in this movie. Not consistently throughout, though. Would you guys agree?
I'd agree.
I generally do agree with everything you're saying. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about the music, or. I mean, for me, it wasn't the music itself that stood out. It's what the music meant to the characters, right? So for me, it's like the theme of the coming of age theme. Is that what makes you enjoy this movie as much as it does for me?
I enjoyed the movie and the music. It didn't connect from like the coming of age theme. Like there weren't many songs that I kind of found to be connected to the themes. Which song were you specifically thinking of, Frez?
Oh, I'm not saying that the songs themselves were connected to the
just
theme.
Like the vibe?
Yeah, just the vibe of it. And also, I mean, there's a lot of, part of the dialogue probably does that much more than the music itself.
I think the music does, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, there are parts. So like when Anita was Zoe Deschanel, who I didn't recall that she was in the movie.
Yeah.
But she's basically leaving home when she turns 18 because she has an overprotective mother. And she tells her brother, William, like, hey, look under your bed, it will set you free. As in the music will set William free.
Yeah.
Like it was like moments like that, and
then they start playing some music over.
Like that's the kind of stuff that kind of tied the music into the coming of age.
Yeah.
Like you can just see him like becoming a different person when he puts on that record
right.
with like the candle going.
So here's speaking about so you mentioned coming of age as in relation to the music. I think that there's a pretty strong relationship. And I don't know how I don't have the words to describe the kind of music that is playing in the background, but it's light guitar, like I don't know what to describe it as, but it's the music that's playing in the background a couple of times throughout the movie. One, when they're just leaving the concert towards the beginning of the movie, after he had just met the whole band and Penny Lane, and they're leaving, and there's that music in the background that's like kind of soft, and she's talking about how she's gonna go to Morocco and all of this stuff, right? I don't know why, but that music is perfect for like, inspiration or coming of age. You see it at a couple of other times in the movie. For some reason it's escaping me, but it's all at moments where your heart is meant to be tugged. When that movie music is playing, okay, they're trying to make me cry here. So when they're leaving the concert is one. They do it a couple of points, to be honest with you. But I think that there is a direct relationship in the music that he uses in the background and how you're meant to feel, how he wants you to feel. So that's a big part of how he sets up the mood for the movie. And I think a lot of the mood is coming of age. Again, I don't think that that's really the term for it. I think you're right about that.
Then what is the term for it?
I think it's just a general feel-good, positive vibe.
I think it's about, coming of age can be, you can just replace it by saying finding oneself. And I think that's what William is doing more or less throughout this whole movie. Is finding who he really is. Not just him. I mean, the band too, right? The entire band is this band that's growing exponentially in terms of fame, and they're finding themselves in that. And then there's Penny Lane as well, in which everyone is going through their own growth at just different stages, but they're all connected because they're going through that growth.
Yeah. So Penny Lane actually had a lot of growth in her character.
Absolutely.
Where, she thinks she can possibly love a bandmate, and then by the end of it she's like, no, F you, right? With William's character, I didn't notice much growth in terms of character. I don't know.
There was a couple moments that I thought you could say that he like reached a new point in his life. Like I mentioned, when he first listens to the music that his sister leaves behind for him. Another one would be when he keeps saying he needs to go home when they're on tour, and I think Penny or someone says, "You are home," and he kind of like has like a realization, like, "Oh God, like this is my life."
Yeah, and then
it's not so much that he's like upset about it, but it's more like a little, I guess, surprised, like this is happening, that this is my life right now.
Yeah.
When Russell basically trades Penny for like beer and some cash.
Oh right. Yeah. Right.
And like there's like this moment that he just realizes, wow, this is cruel.
And it's and where he decides that it's not right to be purely loyal to the bandmates, right? He respected, there was like this the loyalty he showed him. He thought in that moment he had to break it just to be truthful to Penny, and
even then he doesn't break it so easily. Like Penny is kind of like bothering him or annoying him,
right,
to the point that he's like, he just has to like let her know.
Also, that
was a well acted scene by Penny.
I think there's the moments like that are all throughout this. I could talk forever. I got a couple pages of notes, guys. I could talk forever, so you're gonna have to stop me. But there's moments all throughout this movie that are full of emotion, and like he plays with you on a human level. He brings everything to a human level. I mean, this is not like Shakespearean emotion, it's just everyday stuff that's why it tugs at our heartstrings. You mentioned the scene where I think you referenced the scene where where William first tells Penny Lane, "Hey, they treated you for $50 in a case of beer," and her acting that follows. That scene itself is pretty garbage, I'll be honest with you. Outside of just her acting after he tells her. Do you guys remember that? You guys remember?
Yeah, she starts weeping.
She starts weeping, but kind of. Tears are falling, but she kind of just sucks it up, smiles, forgets, not just she didn't forget about it. She smiles.
Yeah, she smiles. It's a slight
and
smile.
And then she makes
right.
a joke about it, where she says, "What
Yeah,
kind
she's
of
like,
beer?"
What kind of beer?
And that's so true to her character.
Right. The smiling indicates that she should have known all along, right? And that she's guilty of going
well, that
against
she's
her own
brushing
advice.
it off.
Yeah.
Right? She's like, okay, I mean, that's all right. I mean, I'm going to take it, I'm going to be positive just like I am about everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's her character. I mean, she won an award for this character because partly because I think because of how well they wrote the character or how well they developed her character, but also because of how she acted it. I don't think anybody could have acted it in the way that she did. I mean, her character, like I said, so if you watch Elizabethtown, is very similar to Kirsten Dunst. She's deeply charismatic. She's carefree. She's like she's very mystical. She's like wise, but also naive. She's very optimistic for the future, full of, inspiration and hope for what the future holds. A lot of the characters are. And she's, I would say the term imperfectly beautiful. Like she's not wearing veneers in this movie. You see her smile and it's not, I mean, there's spaces between her teeth. It's not a perfect smile, but it's human. And I think, I think that they do that so that, you kind of fall for them a bit. Not even a bit, you fall for them a lot because they're people that you fall for in real life. So I think that, and the way that she like flirts in this movie, when she meets Russell for the first time, like those little things that she does, the way that she even looks at him and then she laughs and she like
touches her hair
shyly,
or something.
I was going to say, that's one of the scenes that I thought was super forced, where the chemistry felt so forced.
It did a little bit, but you have to remember this is the year 2000. I mean, what movies were around that time? There's great acting from other movies at that time. I agree.
Love and interest is something that's existed forever.
Yeah,
so
I know. I know. And I think again, I mean, he doesn't put as much time as he should, I think, in my opinion, into developing certain scenes. So where it does feel forced, but even for what they were given. Abrupt. She did an amazing job. And I can't say that about any other movie that she's been. I haven't really, to be honest with you, watched a lot of other stuff that she's been in.
I was getting back to the other Cameron Crowe movie that he made, Elizabethtown. So you might mention the awards won by Kate Hudson can be attributed to the writing of the character, and the writing's just as good in Elizabethtown, right? And so,
in my opinion, and I will say that because I'm probably a little bit biased because this guy was my favorite director.
Gotcha.
In my opinion, and in pretty much nobody else's opinion.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Was she also nominated for an award in Elizabethtown?
I would highly doubt it.
No. Okay.
That movie did not see a lot of love. I mean, that's kind of that's why if she wasn't in this movie, I don't think that it would have gotten really any love. I don't think it would have gotten much love at all.
Also, when we were discussing like the coming of age, right? How it's not a apt description for this movie. Would this be a better description? It's discovery of through the eyes of William of the band Blythe, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a more literal sense, yeah.
It's interesting you say that. It's a discovery for the audience into the band's life.
True.
Yeah, we are him.
We're looking at the world through we're looking at the band through his eyes.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting you said that, and I would totally agree. What did you guys think about the this is gonna sound really pretentious, man. I don't know. I don't mean for it to. I just don't know how else to say this. What do you think about the dichotomy? Okay, I can just be less pretentious. What do you think about the difference in the ways that William and Penny Lane perceive their relationship with each other? Is that something that you guys keyed in on? Is that something you guys noticed at all?
Yeah, so the relationship seemed platonic, with a hint of something being possible later on when he wasn't a minor anymore. I think that's why she avoided any sort of relationship in that manner with him. But, they both loved each other. She loved him as more of a younger brother, and he loved her as something more.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I would add to that is I thought that Penny kind of knew, how William felt, and she kind of, she played along with it in a fun way, not so much like, taking advantage of him.
Yeah, I agree. I think I always think that's an interesting dynamic to have in a movie. For some reason, they play a lot with like underage romance in this movie, so that's kind of weird. But
Oh my god, one cringeworthy ass scene.
Yeah,
The high school,
cheerleaders.
the high school running
or
team.
the high school like joggers or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is.
Yeah. It was kind of weird.
It was weird, but I'm sure the only reason it made it into this movie was because that actually happened.
Probably. I mean, again, hey, this is the 70s. This is 1973.
Right.
And I'm sure that's, I mean, dude, like, freaking Woodstock was
I'm
happening.
not denying it, man, but it doesn't make it comfortable to watch.
Nope.
It is
It's
pretty
pretty
uncomfortable, I will say.
yeah.
I thought it was really interesting because that played a lot into what made him a good actor in this movie.
Who? Billy
I
Crudup?
can't even tell you, Billy Crudup, what's William Miller.
Oh, okay.
His acting was better than I remember it being. And it's mostly because of how he looks at her with such admiration. And again, I mean, so one scene that comes to my mind is when, she's OD'd on the Quaaludes, and he's trying to like keep her basically, awake. And then again, that scene is great, and it's also like terrible because she's so bad at playing somebody who's drunk.
Not just drunk, just like overdosing.
Well, she also had a drink in her hand. So I don't know what it was, but she's terrible in that scene. But at the end of that scene, that music that I was talking about, that comes in, and you just see the way that he's watching her with so much, adoration. He's just so enamored by her, and it's kind of like a romance. It's like the budding romance, even though she doesn't know anything about it. And he's like, she's like the most amazing woman I've ever seen. And she's like getting her stomach pumped at that time. So I just thought that was a really interesting scene. And it was a really interesting dynamic between them. Even when he's about to get like, quote unquote deflowered. And he's just sitting on the bed.
That was a little uncomfortable too.
It was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The girls were just dancing around. Again, but you know what? We don't know how old those girls were. He and Penny Lane are just kind of staring at each other, and that's when you really see the dichotomy, because he's looking at her romantically, and she's looking at him like a little brother, or like like somebody in the friend zone. You know what I mean? And I thought that was really interesting. Also, why was Jimmy Fallon in this movie? That was weird. I didn't think he was a good actor at all.
That was a miscast.
It was a weird choice.
That was a miscast. Maybe he was trying to break into acting.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was in the movie either until he showed up. Even after he showed up, it was like 3-4 minutes later. I was like, oh wait, that was Jimmy Fallon, right?
Yeah.
With sideburns, right?
With sideburns. He wasn't bad. It was just, I think it was a weird choice for the role. Like, I don't know. What else you got? I mean, Faraz, you gave this a 95 on themes. This is pretty much that whole thing. It's just the overall mood.
Overall mood, yeah. I like when people are digging deep and figuring themselves out, finding out who they are,
Sure.
what they want.
Yeah.
And like I said, I thought it was on many levels in the movie, from the band to Penny to William.
Yeah.
And like, I guess the steady hand was Philip Seymour Hoffman's character. What was the guy's name? Lester, I think.
Lester Bangs.
Yeah, Lester Bangs.
Well, and Frances McDormand, who's, I mean...
Oh, yeah, she was great as overprotective mom.
What's the first movie that we watched with her?
Fargo?
You and I watched Fargo. Oh, my God.
She's so great in there.
She is so good.
She's really funny.
Yeah, I don't know if she's won any awards, but she deserves all of them, man. She's so good at playing a side character. In Fargo, she was sort of a main character, but... What did we watched Moonrise Kingdom that she was in, and she was amazing in that. She's just as good in this movie. Underrated performance. I think she was still nominated for stuff. I don't think she won anything.
She was nominated for this movie, Almost Famous, supporting role. She won for Fargo in leading role.
There you go.
And she won for 3 Billiards Outside of Ebbing,
Okay.
Missouri.
Yeah, I gotta watch that movie.
Same here. I haven't seen it either.
So yeah, I mean, it's an amazing supporting cast. Philip Seymour Hoffman, I mean, he does as well of a performance as you can do in something that's so minuscule a role.
He's in a lot of like these minuscule roles. I remember him very clearly in that movie Twister. He's just as like
Twister, really?
Yeah, he's in that movie.
The tornado movie? Yeah. No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't know this.
Yeah, I love him as an actor.
Interesting. Yeah, and again, I mean, a lot of that is probably also the script. I think a lot of that is the dialogue that he's given, because you can't give him all the credit, but the way he acts the dialogue, you give it to anybody else, they're not going to act it the same way. They're not going to perform it the same way. Mm-hmm. The pauses that he puts in naturally.
Yeah, the cadence, right? Like his is it's so specific to him.
Yeah. And so we sort of mentioned timing as well. We could I can go into that, but specifically with his character, there's pauses and there's filler periods. I wouldn't say filler words. There's filler times, and that's what makes it so natural. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's amazing in this movie. Speaking of the time thing, so we mentioned how each character is given sort of some time before, and you mentioned after, but it's also before,
mm-hmm. where the camera just lingers, right?
Right, so the camera lingers so you can focus on their emotion. Mm-hmm. One thing that I just noticed, and that's just on the rewatch of this movie. I watched this movie at least, this is probably my 10th or 11th, maybe 14th millionth time watching this movie. And I just noticed it this time. For the main characters,
yeah.
So this is going to be William Miller. This is going to be and Kate Hudson, and even Russell Hammond. When they're first introduced, not Russell Hammond, but the other two, when they're first introduced, you see that they are what takes up the majority of the screen. Or they're not even introduced. There's certain periods in the movie where it's literally he's making a portrait of the movie. If you were to pause the scene,
yeah,
it's a portrait. It looks like a painting.
Because it's so zoomed in?
It's like you're looking at a still portrait of just their face, like somebody's just painting their face.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
and that's most of the screen. Couple noticeable. So it's when Zooey Deschanel is telling him one day you're gonna be cool, and that scene, they show him and then they show her, and that's a portrait. It's literally like I said, it looks like a painting. They do the same thing with her. I don't remember when, but I thought that was really interesting. That's the one thing that I saw cinematically outside of the music that gave it a really good score, aesthetic score.
Yeah, like the when they do zoom in faces, it's got a great blurring in the background, so all you can really focus on is the faces. Yeah.
Yeah, you focus on the raw emotion.
Right.
Especially, Russell Hammond, they do that with that character. What's the actor's name?
Russell Hammond.
That's Billy
Crudup.
That's Billy Crudup?
Yeah.
Who's William Miller? I'm confused with the two, man.
William Miller.
Patrick Fugan?
Oh, that is Patrick F word, yeah. So I've been confusing the two characters this whole time. So Billy Crudup, specifically with his character, they play on those pauses a lot. Mm-hmm. They do that a lot. When they're leaving him and he just turns around and he says, "Write whatever you want." There's like a good 3-4 seconds of nothing, and then he says the line.
Mm-hmm.
They focus on his face a lot now that I think about it.
He's a good-looking dude.
That one time when he's at dinner with the band and his actual wife or actual girlfriend, I don't even know what the relationship was.
Girlfriend.
And he just keeps like looking out over to Penny Lane.
Mm-hmm. Trying to pretend like she's
now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, they were like super zoomed in on his face on a crowded table.
To show the awkwardness of the situation, right? Where he didn't want to acknowledge her.
Yeah. With Kate Hudson, that scene that I was just talking about where she does the tear thing, where she has tears, but then she wipes it away and smiles at the same time.
Yeah.
When she looks back at the camera, back at William, I should say, that's a portrait. I could take a picture of that, and there's like the way that the lighting even just drops on her. It's very picturesque. It's very, very picturesque. And I mean, again, that's something that he does a lot in his movies. He focuses a lot on idiosyncrasies of each character, specifically the people who are meant to charm you. And I think charm is a huge thing that he goes for, always.
For sure.
You can't. What do we say? This movie's better than the sum of its parts. It's because of the charm.
Yeah, all the characters are pretty charismatic. You just fall for them.
Exactly. And no matter what, if you can hate the movie, but if you watch this, it's I don't know if I would call it a chick flick, but if you watch it with somebody's crying. It's charm. It's so much. There's so much charm in the movie. A lot of that is some dialogue, some of it's the comedy, but a lot of it is just the way that the music plays in, the way that the camera is just focused on each character, and the performance that's given.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love Cameron Crowe. I think he's so underrated, personally.
I like how much you like this movie. Does that make sense? I like when people are passionate about movies and like they just go on a spiel about like how much they love the movie.
I think that's just me with a lot of movies, but yeah, man, I like I focus a lot on detail, and I watch movies several times, and I don't think a lot of people do that. Sometimes they're meant to be. You miss a lot.
You do,
and
you pick up something new every time you watch it. For sure.
Right, absolutely. Even this movie, the scenes in this movie where I know it's gonna be a great scene. Even then, when I'm watching it, I'm like, God damn, this is a great scene.
Okay.
Like, this is such a good scene, you know. But that's just, that's just me. I'm like that. As for us, I'm like that with a lot of movies that we watch. Man. I was like that with the Charlie Chaplin movie that we watched.
Oh yeah, get ready for City Lights.
Yeah, that's gonna be a hard watch. We'll see.
What are your overall thoughts, guys?
It's definitely a good watch. You should go see it if you haven't already.
Easy recommendation. I would say for the aesthetics part, even though I don't. Again, it says because I don't know rock and roll music that well, so I couldn't even name the songs that they were playing. But it makes you feel it's immersive. You get into the movie through the music, like Farhan was saying. Like, it's obviously very intentional what songs are playing at what moments, and so like the aesthetic score plus the themes, I think those are the two things that really drawed me into the movie.
Okay.
I think one of the main things that the music is meant to do is the nostalgia aspect, and we talked about that I think quite a bit. I don't listen to classic rock. My parents never listened to classic rock. I was a brown kid born in the 90s. Somehow I still felt nostalgic for this era. Did you guys feel the same way?
Exactly.
I do.
How did they make us nostalgic for a time that we never lived in and the time that our parents never lived in?
Yeah, you've got to chalk it up to Cameron Crowe's directing, because he loved it this time so much. It translates well.
So overall, if you're looking for a charming movie and you want some nostalgia, and a lot of our viewers, probably this will apply to you a lot more, go ahead and watch the movie.
Definitely. All right, I think we're at a good spot.
Cool. Good insight, guys. Fahad, it was a pleasure, dude.
Pleasure was all mine.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks, everyone. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening to this production of The Twice Over. If you haven't already, subscribe and follow wherever you get your podcast. And remember to support us on Patreon or by sharing the podcast with a friend. Feel free to contact us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook at The Twice Over, or email us at comments@thetwiceover.com. All of the music you heard is from Amerigo Gazaway. Check him out on Bandcamp and Spotify.